Good afternoon and welcome to the CGRC webinar. Today we're going to talk about qualifying and cultivating major gift donors. Let's do just a few little housekeeping items. We will hold questions until the end of the webinar. So if you have something as we're going through it that you're like, oh, I don't want to forget to do this, go. For those of you who are online, go ahead and type it in and submit it, and we'll see it when we get done. Those of you who are here, very informal. If you need to get up and get something to drink or use the restroom, by all means do so. This webinar, along with all of our webinars, are being recorded, and you can at any time pull those off of our website and show those to people in your office or share them with other fundraising professionals. One thing that I want to not forget to mention is that our next webinar is going to be on December 11th. And our presenter is going to be Rachel Dekarian, and Rachel is a prospect research analyst at Drake University, and she's going to share with us prospect research tips and tricks. So for those of you who wondered, how the heck do we do this, and where do I go, and what do I look for, Rachel has been doing it for a very long time as in both the nonprofit and the political profession. So we're very excited to have her as a presenter for that webinar again on December 12th at noon. You can sign on to participate from your office, or you're welcome to come into our office, and we always have good treats and something great to drink. So today we're going to talk about qualifying and cultivating major gift donors, and this is a topic that a lot of people call and say, how do I know when they're ready to be asked for something bigger than what they've done? And where do I find these people? How do I identify them? So today we're going to actually talk about that. So the agenda is, how do you select donors for major gift qualifying? What are some of the things you look at to say, all right, let's see if they qualify as a major gift donor? Once you understand who that pool is, then how do I qualify them as a major gift donor? How do you create goals in respect to selecting these and then cultivating those relationships? And then identifying some giving cycles, because many of you may or may not understand that there are different things that people will do when it comes to giving to your organization that it's always really good to keep an eye on. So developing that portfolio of major donors, you have to first select the donors for the caseload pool, and that is, how much can you as an individual, or a couple of you in the office, or however many there are, how many can you appropriately handle at one time? And I was speaking down in Kansas City a couple months ago, and I had a young woman raise her hand, and she said, you know, I've got about 300 people in my major gift portfolio. And I paused for a minute, and I said, so how's that working out? And she said, it's not, and I don't know what to do. That is way too many people. There are only 365 days in the year. We've got 52 weeks. They all have weekends that take 2 days. So there you've got another 104 days to pull out. Plus, you have to have vacation time, and you have to have time to do other stuff besides working with major gift donors, because the majority of us wear more than one hat. My personal perception is that if you have 100 people in your pipeline at a time, that's probably a manageable number. And depending upon how much you're having to do with each one of them, you could incrementally inch that up to maybe 150. But be careful that you don't take on too many, and that affects you at the end of the year when it comes to appraisal time. So selecting the donors for your portfolio. I didn't realize that there were 5 elements that help determine donors. For those of you who have not told this story to before, I started life as a clinical dietitian. Go figure. Here I am doing nonprofit consulting. But I was afforded many great opportunities, and when I got into the nonprofit industry, I fell in love. But nobody told me how we figured this out, because there was somebody else figuring it out for me. So when I got into this position, I wanted to make sure that I understood what that was and that I could effectively teach others to understand what that is. So there's 5 indicators for major gift programs or individuals. Recency, how recent did they make a donation to you? Frequency, how often do they give to your organization? How much do they give? Do we know the capacity of their giving to your organization? And where's that relationship? Is there even a relationship beyond just a direct mail approach? So again, see how long has it been since the donor's last gift? Generally speaking, donors who have not given in the last 12 months are usually considered lapsed donors, or some people call them libent, last year, but unfortunately not this year. Lots of different terminology that can be used, but if it's been more than 12 months and they've not given, that means you are at risk of losing that individual as a donor to your organization unless you take steps to re-engage them. The very best major donor candidates are going to be those people who have given in the past 12 months and preferably in the past 3 to 6 months. Something has happened very recently to cause them to make a gift to you. This doesn't mean you're not going to go after those people who it's been 12 to 18 months, but when we look at the big picture, we're going to look at those who have given most recently to you. So frequently. Typically, donors who give frequently throughout the year tend to be men and women who already have a close relationship with you. Therefore, they're the strongest potential major gift donors. Gift amount. This is the primary indicator when you create this preliminary caseload we talked about early on, but it can't be the only indicator. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that is. So when analyzing those giving files, or what individuals have been giving to your organization over the past years or months, those that are ready for major gift plans are generally a clear group of donors who are giving more than the rest. So if you have a donor database that you can drop in the last 24 months of givers and then sort them by gift amounts, generally it's pretty easy to look at that and say the majority of our givers are in this range right here. And you'll want to look at that and say, this is probably a group I want to look at a little deeper. And that amount's going to vary from charity to charity. One charity might be looking at people who give $100 to $500. There may be other charities that are looking at $1,000 to $5,000. So don't get caught up on the amount. We're looking at the number of times that they've given and a consistent amount. So capacity, look at the giving levels as well as the giving history. They're both subjective and objective indicators for donors and their capacity. I remember when I first started in the nonprofit world, every week I would get a stack of thank you notes that I had to sign. And the first few weeks I did it, I just signed my name and I gave them back to the person in the front office and they shipped them off. And then I started thinking, gosh, I really don't even know who these people are. So before I would sign my name, I'd pull them up in the donor software and I'd look to see how long has Sue given to this organization. So I might write a little note that said, thanks for being a consistent giver for the last 7 years, or thanks for your 3rd gift this year. I had no idea the impact that those little notes were going to make. I had people picking up the phone, calling me saying, I had no idea I'd been given to you for 7 years. That's pretty cool. Thanks for looking at that. Or, wow, I guess I have given 3 times this year. I hope that's okay. Absolutely. So that little 30 seconds of going back and finding some kind of little historical perspective to tie into a thank you can also start setting that seed or that field for someone to become a major gift. The way we select donors is by looking at their giving levels and gathering information from people who know these donors in order to determine what that capacity to give more may be. And what's one of the first groups that you could ask? Your board of directors. So if you have a list of a couple hundred people that you think, all right, I think that these might be a group of people I want to look at, throw them out to your board of directors. And some of you might have a development subcommittee of your board, meaning they really are honed in on the fundraising of what you're doing. Take it to that group and say, help me understand, do you recognize any of these individuals? And are some of them ones you would say, you know, they are consistent givers at that level, but that's probably the level that they'll always be at? Or, gosh, this is great, but this person could potentially do more. So use the resources that are sitting right in front of you regularly to help you identify and cultivate those relationships. Wealth overlay. This is a term that some of you may have heard. And if you have donor database software, often those software companies can do a wealth overlay. This is simply an in-depth research project that examines each of your donors and the public information about them. So it may say that, Tim has 3 homes with mortgages of this amount. They give to the Democratic Party at this level. They've given to the following organizations at this level. This is where we think that their disposable income level might be. And yeah, that is a term that you'll see on some of these overlays, is disposable income, meaning that they can't tie it to anything that they found publicly. So they may have disposable income each year of $5,000 to $50,000 a year. I want you to understand that while that data is wonderful, sometimes it's not what it looks to be. It may not be all-inclusive. So it can be relevant and can be used for many years, but sometimes it's not 100% accurate. So make sure that you know that going into it. Again, be careful. It can indicate who the wealthiest donors are in your file, but this doesn't mean that these are the people that are going to give you the largest gifts. I worked with a couple of donors when I was at a church, and I knew that they had the potential and they had given $1 million gifts. But there were organizations that they never came close to giving that much to. In fact, the most they might give is a cow or a goat instead of the $1 million. So what does that tell you? They weren't the right prospect for that particular organization. So make sure you understand where their love is. Some of them, again, have the capacity, but they're never going to be motivated to give you a major gift. You'll find that out through conversations. Others might have a long-standing gift giving with your organization or with other organizations, but that might keep them giving to you at a small giving level because their commitments are so high elsewhere. Doesn't always indicate that they will give you at that same level. Donor plus capacity does not equal major gift. If you take one thing away from this webinar, I hope it's that those two things in concert with each other does not mean that they are your very best prospect for a major gift. Relationships. This is very subjective, and it's somewhat contingent on whoever has been managing that donor prior to beginning the major gifts program. So if you've never had a major giving program, that relationship that another individual has established with that donor may not have gotten them to the point of being a major gift prospect, even though you see all the right signs there. So make sure that you enter that relationship or that conversation somewhat cautiously. Make sure you know, why do they give to your organization? Why do they love you so much? Why do they give to other organizations? The person that has been working with the donor files up to this point will have an idea about the donors who are already bonded to the organization. Hopefully they have made those notes in your donor software system. Some people are really good about that. Some people are not. But I used to say to people I worked with, if I get hit by a beer truck tomorrow, I hope that you can go into the donor data software database and understand exactly where I left that last call. So again, if there's one thing that I can help you do as a nonprofit professional, take notes or keep notes about conversations you have with donors, because you never know when someone else may want to go talk to them, and they need to know where you left off and what that next step might be. Some of these folks may not have demonstrated great loyalty because of their recency or frequency or their gift amount, but the person managing that donor may know something about that individual donor that could make them become a major gift donor. So there's lots of what-ifs when you talk about creating and cultivating major gift donors, but you just have to remember, sometimes you have to go with your gut feel or the gut feel of the person before you. Major gift donor portfolio. So now that you've selected all of the donors off of your database that meet those criteria, you've created a portfolio or a pipeline. This is a group of people that met a criteria. Doesn't mean you're going to have conversations with all of them. Doesn't mean that they're all going to give you a major gift, but it's a starting point. So now we want to qualify that portfolio or that pipeline. And I use those two terms because depending upon the industry that you're in, you may be using the word pipeline. What's our donor pipeline for this? That just means how are you pushing them up the scale of giving? What this selection has not addressed up to this point is whether the donor wants to connect on a personal basis or not. Maybe they've given to you every year for 10 years, but that's all they want. Don't call me, don't come visit me, I like where I'm at. So now you need to qualify them. So 1 in every 3 donors that meet the criteria we just reviewed may want to connect with you in a personal way. The others are going to say, you know what, Susan, I really don't have an interest in you calling on me, so just put me in there as somebody who's going to keep giving, but let's keep it at that for now. That's okay. Make sure you log that information. That's why it's so important to qualify your donors in this caseload or pipeline to determine if they actually want to connect to you in a more personal way. I will tell you the single biggest mistake you can make is not to ask, because you will find people who say, yeah, thank you for asking. I would like you to know more about me and why I give to your organization. You have a 50-50 chance of them saying, yes, I want to connect more personally, or no, don't bother me anymore. But 50-50 is a whole lot better than 1 in 100. So I would make sure that you ask. So how do you do this? My hope is that some of the next few tips are actual things that you can take away and say, now I know how to ask them about this. So by starting with an introductory series of questions that are later in the presentation is how you'll get this done. The objective is to contact each donor in the portfolio. So now you've decided who's in there, now we're going to qualify them. We're going to contact them to uncover who's going to become a major gift prospect. Now, uncovering may mean you don't have a one-on-one contact with them. It may be through other methods, so we'll talk about that. But once we have made the determination, then we need to move to the next step of creating goals. It's part science, part art, and it's not 100% accurate. It really has a lot to do with a gut feel. The science part is indicated by each donor's giving history. Those are facts. You know what those numbers are. We know that what each donor has given cumulatively in the past years, and this can help you determine what the goal might be this year. Gosh, Fred and his wife Lorna have given us $100 every year for 5 years. Maybe we need to ask them to increase that gift and see what happens. The art part is based on what we know about the donors related to their passion for our charity as well as their giving capacity. For example, if Mrs. Jones gave $2,000 in 2002 and $3,000 in 03 and 04, the science part of this would lead us to try to increase our giving to $4,000 or $5,000 in 05, right? But what if we know Mrs. Jones loves kids and that a certain program related to kids needs to be funded? We might then try to bring her a project proposal in the range of $5,000 to $10,000, or what if we know that she has many organizations that she supports at the $25,000 level? We might want to break out our proposal and say, let's go in and look at the $25,000 to $50,000 range because she's done that before. We know she loves programs that are particular services to children. Let's start delving into that conversation to see if that might not be where we go. That's the art. That's that personal cultivation piece of this conversation. As you go through the goal-setting process, and goals mean a goal of increasing what they're giving you or a goal of getting them into that major gift pool. So it may ultimately be that you started out with 300 names. A portion of those names you say, these are just people we want to get to increase the amount they're giving to us right now. We see other things that say maybe they're not major giving people, and others are going to be major gift prospects. If a gap exists in giving, always go with the last amount given. Don't assume that if for 5 years they've increased by $100 and now it's been a 3-year lapse that you should increase that by $300. Wrong assumption. Point in case. One of the nonprofits that I worked for, they were overseen by a larger geographical kind of national office, if you might say. And that office had a policy that if I, as a donor, gave $100 this year, then next year I would ask you for $500. I cannot tell you how many times that blew up in our face. People saying, really? 5 times? That's more than what the actual cost of living increases are. Are you crazy? And in some instances, their giving went down. So don't assume if there has been a gap, always go with the last amount that they gave. Target high so that what you actually get is what you want. And that you might say, isn't that contradictory to what you just said? That's really in relationship to, I know a little bit more about them, and I know they have a capacity to go to this amount. I'm not comfortable going that high. So maybe you make it a little bit higher, and they're like, oh, thank you for asking, Susan, but that's not where I'd like to be, but I would like to increase my giving to you. So don't go so high that you offend the person, but maybe that you say, we're thinking you can go higher than you are now. Have a goal worksheet and also have a private goal worksheet that's a little higher. So this is what I want them to be, but this is where I wish they could be, and maybe you can land somewhere in between. On your private list, have a goal for everyone, regardless of the past giving, saying, all right, I know that they've only given 100, but I'm hoping someday I can get them to the 1,000 mark. That may be part of your personal and professional pipeline for them. It may not be what you ask them for today. It's thinking ahead. Again, that's part of that art, not really the science. Uneven numbers versus whole numbers might mean something extraordinary is going on. Find out why. Has someone always been giving you $500 and all of a sudden they gave a gift of $1,786.23? Wow, what was that? Pick up the phone and call and say, thank you so much for that gift. I have to tell you, I had to kind of laugh because it's so different than what you normally do. Can I ask why? Maybe an aunt left them some money and that was the size of the check that she gave them. Something happened to make them give that kind of odd amount. Try to get a bottom line year-to-year increase of about 15% for management, and that's your management, and then manage the details to get there. That's where that private versus a management goal list is. This is what I'm telling management that I hope I can increase to. This is what my private list is, and this is where I personally hope I can get them to. Identify giving cycles. So in addition to knowing what dollar amount to ask for, it's also important to know when to ask. This is pretty easy because that involves getting into your donor software and investigating when each of your donor gives. I know that traditionally my husband and I will give in December or we give in June. And that's because we like to make sure that we take advantage of matching gift at both of our employers. And that just is when that happens. So if the people we give to would look at our giving cycles, they're going to see that that is what happens, with the exception of our church, which is a monthly thing. Some will be random and may have been giving whenever they were asked. So does their giving tie to some type of a direct mail appeal that you're sending out? And is every time you send something, they send you back $5? Maybe I should be sending things more often or asking them. You know, it's real interesting. I noticed that every time we send you something, you make a gift. Help me understand what it is about that piece that prompts you to make a gift to us. If there are circumstances, you might want to set their giving schedule based on when they seem to have given most frequently. Maybe they give a lot, but the majority of their gifts are always between June and September, so it's summer months. Maybe they're school teachers, and that's just when they have time to look at their mail and really look at the pieces that you're sending you. If other circumstances exist, you'll see that some donors always give at the exact same time every year. They are like clockwork. You should also note typically that they give a certain number of times each year. Maybe somebody gives 6 times a year and it's every other month. Isn't that interesting? When am I sending them information? If it's on the month opposite of when they traditionally give, you're missing the boat with that. It's important to make note of these things on your pipeline or portfolio sheet or even in your donor database so that you remember and others who come in and look at this donor information know that, wow, you've pointed something out that I didn't realize before. For example, let's say that Mr. Smith gives once a year and always in December. Our communication plan might start in June and build up to a December ask. So maybe we're informational for 4 to 6 months before we actually ask him to make a gift. Then from January to June, we'll thank and report back to him on what his money has done for our organization. Doesn't mean you have to do it every month, but it could be a follow-up call, a wonderful way of saying, again, Mr. Smith, just want to let you know you made a great gift in December, and we actually were able to use part of the proceeds from that direct mail appeal this week when we started X, Y, and Z. Concurrently, Mrs. Thomas might give quarterly gifts of $1,000. One thing is to find out whether she prefers that structure or whether she'd rather commit to an annual gift. So you will base your communication plan with her based on what she prefers. Maybe she does a quarterly because that's when you send out newsletters and that's when the giving card is there. And it might just be a call, you know, we appreciate that you give each time we send out our newsletter. If you would prefer to do that in one-time gifts, we can actually help make that happen. Donor Introductory Series, new to major gift portfolio. So there are some tools that you can use, and they each have a specific goal attached to them. The first letter you might want to send out is just general information. Then you may do a phone call. That's a follow-up to the letter. Letter 2 might be a survey of some sort. You may send out a note card, and then there's a phone call for high-dollar donors. And we're going to talk about these. So letter 1. This general introduction letter should begin with a letter that's sent to each donor that you've put into this pipeline, introducing yourself and explaining what you do and how you can be of service to donors. Here's an example, and I know this is very small, but I wanted to make sure that you leave with something that's tangible that you can actually cut and paste and use if you want. So this is why I'm just going to take a minute to read. I'm writing you to introduce a program we have here at Organization in City XYZ, supporting the important role you play with the people we serve and the programs we deliver on a daily basis. We realize that many of our special friends and donors need a point of contact here. Sometimes it's to get more information on how your giving is making a difference. Sometimes it's to express concern or give an idea. Sometimes it's to get information for a project for a child in school or secure a speaker for a community event or organize a fundraising program in your community. What has that paragraph just done? It's helped them understand, oh my gosh, I can use this person, their name and number for a whole host of things. Then you go on to talk about, in order to meet the needs, exactly what's going on in your organization, and then to offer them something. I'd like to get better acquainted with you, to understand what you need from us, but also to regularly tell you how your giving is making a difference in the lives of disadvantaged individuals in our city and the counties we serve. I'll be contacting you, so you're telling them you're going to call them, so I can understand how we can better serve you in our communications. Thank you for all you do to serve those less fortunate. We're indeed grateful for your partnership. Should you need anything, you can call me at our office or my cell phone, and here's my email. I'm looking forward to talking to you. Now again, this is just an example, and you may not want to offer everyone a personal phone call depending upon the number of individuals you put in that pipeline, but this gives you a starting point of some text or some words to use. A phone call. Following letters, you should follow up with phone calls to the entire caseload. Try to do it a couple weeks after that letter goes. Don't miss the opportunity to have that touch again. you should ask if they received the letter and then follow up to questions you asked and try to learn more about them as a prospect. The reason you ask if they received it, because sometimes the mailman puts it in the wrong mailbox. Sometimes you have the wrong address and you didn't put return request on it, and so you didn't get it back. They might say, I haven't gotten anything from you in a long time. There's a big red flag, so make sure you don't miss the opportunity to update information. Here's some talking points that you might want to use. Make sure you introduce yourself and your title. Ask them if they got the letter. Have you had a chance to read it? If they haven't received the letter, then we explain the purpose of the call and reiterate what you said in the letter. I'm not going to go through all these talking points, but again, it's a starting point for you when you pick up the phone to make that call. Letter 2. Donors who don't respond in any way to your letter or your messages, they should be contacted again via mail. And some people would say, I'm not going to spend the extra postage on these. If you've taken the time and given the attention to this group of individuals and you believe that they are potential major givers to your organization, it's worth the postage to ask again. So here's an example. Again, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but you want to reiterate that you know they're busy, you respect their privacy, what's your motivation in contacting them. You don't want to send information that they don't want to receive, and not only does that waste money, it doesn't treat you the way they need to be treated. So you end by saying, would you be so kind to take a moment and complete the enclosed information survey? Maybe they don't want to tell you in person, but they'll fill out a card and send it back to you. Letter 3, depending upon the circumstances, often it makes sense to send non-responders a handwritten note explaining that you appreciate their support and you simply want to gather more information about their communication preferences. How do you want to be communicated to? I want to make sure that we're being good stewards of your resources, not sending you too much, and if we're not sending you enough, I'd like to know what else it is you're looking for. Having not heard from them, you'll continue to communicate with them every so often, and you individually have to determine when is that kind of cutoff point. All right, it's been 18 months. I've heard nothing from them. They're continuing their giving pattern. Obviously, they're not a major giving donor. You'll pull them out of that pipeline, put them back, make notes in their donor area in the software. A final phone call, I would reserve this for those people that you believe are your potential high-dollar donors that you've not heard from. Make sure that you're not calling somebody who has been a $100 donor. You're not really sure if they could ever give more, but you just wanted to connect with them because they've been so consistent and so frequent with their giving. Doesn't mean you can't call them one final time if you haven't heard, but I think I'd start from the top and work down. Again, remember that only 1/3 of your donors that you contact are going to want more personal relationships with your organization. And this happens a lot of time when we get beyond major gifts and we go into planned gifts. Why do people not tell you they've left you a planned gift? They don't want you calling them all the time. They don't want you coming and visiting. They don't want you putting their name on a plaque. They don't want everybody in the community to know. They just want to do it and be left alone and know that they've done something really good. You know your current donors that correspond regularly. Don't go through this with them. If they correspond regularly, you don't have to go through all of this. You've already garnered that relationship. It is good to refresh your information in case there's anything changed or things you're not aware of, especially if there's been a death and for whatever reason it hasn't been picked up with your mail service or nobody in your office has seen it in an obituary or hasn't been picked up by a Google search. It's always good to ask, is the information we're using to send to you correct? If not, would you take a minute and just let us know how you would like that to be? Keep your major gift donor caseload manageable. Don't have every single day you have something you need to do. You might want to carve out what I would call gold time. If you use Outlook as a calendaring system, or maybe you have something with donor software, generally they have areas where you can color code. Set aside an hour or two a week that says, this is when I'm going to do all of my major gift contacts. And keep that as sacred time. Nobody puts anything over that time. It's that important for you to do. If you don't manage that well, you are creating a disaster that either you're going to have to contend with or the person who comes in after you is going to have to contend with. Things to remember when contacting your donors. Think of the donor as a friend and communicate with them in that manner. If you're dealing with someone you really like, you're intuitive, go with the flow. If you're not as familiar, that's a spell check, go with that style. If you have the gut feel that maybe the way you started the contact, they paused, maybe you've been too familiar with them and they don't feel like you're at that point in the relationship yet. Pay attention to what is happening in that relationship. There's going to be clues so that you know what to do next. Don't think in terms of shoulds for major gift fundraising, even things you have learned. You're now in a warm, friendly relationship. Listen to that relationship. Look for a logical next point of what the donor is saying to you. They might end the conversation, maybe you have coffee with them, and they might say, you know, Amanda, if you have something that you think I might be interested in coming to at your organization, will you give me a call? That's a great clue as to what that next step might be. Go back to the office, look for some things that you think he or she might be interested in, and make a point of jotting down on your calendar, call Helen and Jean to attend this particular program that we have. Spend more time listening for clues and entry points than running that formula through your head. And some people disagree with me, but God gave you 2 eyes and 2 ears and only 1 mouth for a reason, and that is because you need to see and listen to what your donors are telling you before you respond. Ask questions not only to get information, but to lead that conversation toward gaining a commitment or a next step. So why are you interested in what X, Y, and Z does? Has that interest led you to take any actions to deal with that problem? It might be a social issue. On the call or in the contact, establish a confident and friendly atmosphere in your conversation. Focus on that atmosphere first, then your objectives. Before you pick up the phone to call, there are some things that you should be thinking about. Remind yourself that each one of your donors is unique and that you're not going to converse with every one of them in the same manner or potentially in the same tone. Remind yourself of the possible outcomes and at least an acceptable outcome, a singular. You might have a number of things you want to happen, but in the end, what's the one thing you'd really like to see happen as a result of this phone call? In other words, decide where you want to go if it turns out really well, and decide in advance what's the least of what you'll be happy with. Maybe they are saying no and they're pushing back, then maybe it's just a matter of at least they let you know that they'll take another call from you. After deciding the objectives, or the point we talked about above, review those to be covered in that particular contact, whether it's person to person or it's the phone. Again, decide this in advance, what you want to achieve. There's not a formula for this. It's not an exact science. Determine what you'll ask the donor to do. Are you asking them to give? Do you want to ask for a visit at a particular site? We have somebody here in the office today that will be doing some opening of a new wing of their particular program and service. Maybe you want to say, gosh, in April we've got this wonderful thing happening. Can I ask you to attend that? So think about some of the things that you could throw up that they might gravitate to. List anticipated questions and your responses to them. This is a lot like doing a presentation in front of a mirror. Ask yourself the questions out loud, and what are you hoping that the responses are? It may tell you that the way you're asking the question isn't going to lead to the response that you want, and you might want to tweak that. So rehearse and visualize prior to going in. Classifying your donors. In the midst of contacting all of these potential major donors in your pipeline or that caseload pool, it's important to classify each one of them. So are they warm prospects? This is a person who obviously wants a personal relationship and a contact from you, but they're not ready to go to that next step. Positive, a person who wants the relationship with you, but maybe not a close, I'll advance what I'm doing and giving, but I don't want you to come see me. Is that okay if we just talk or converse via mail? Absolutely. You may have somebody who says, I don't want you to communicate with me. Yep, I've made a gift or I've done a planned gift, but that's where I want it to end. Let's just leave it there. Don't send me a lot of stuff. I'll decide if I want to contact you. Then pull them out of that caseload or that pipeline and make a note in that donor profile they don't want to be communicated with. Because if you continue to do that with direct mail pieces, you're going to irritate them. And then there's the no response people. I treat them as a positive until you learn otherwise, until somebody says, unsubscribe me from the stuff you're sending me, or you get a note back that says, please take me off your mailing list. If they don't tell you no, I think that's a maybe. Delighting your donors, cultivating them, it's an important part of building loyalty. You know it will eventually help bring in more revenue. So plan to delight. What am I talking about? Well, think of the last time you really had great customer service. And for those of you who aren't from Iowa or the Des Moines area, we have a store called Bon Mar. Exceptional customer service. They wrap anything. They don't care how little you pay for it, and they'll ship it for you and say thank you. It's awesome. Likely it's not a planned positive experience, and you were surprised and not expecting it. Isn't that what you want your donors to do? When I talked early on about putting that little note on the thank you letter, thank you for being a donor for 7 years, that was not expected by that donor, and yet it delights them enough to see that, to pick up the phone and call. Make sure you create some of these. Here's some examples. If you've been talking to a donor and they told you that they love the Kansas City Royals, find an article, email it to them, or send them a little note that says, isn't it great they made it to the playoffs? So find something of interest that isn't an ask for anything. It's just a, hey, I listened to you and I know this is important to you. Send a report on the projects your donor is funding earlier than you expected to send it to them. Go and visit them at their workplace by dropping off a note from one of your programs, like a client saying, thank you for supporting me in this organization. Call a donor up at the last minute and say, I got 2 tickets to the basketball game and I'd love to take you. Does it work? Could I come pick you up or could you meet me at the front door? The list could go on, and none of these ideas are going to work unless you do them. So that golden time that we talked about putting on your calendar, make sure that also includes time to delight your donors with special little somethings. Doesn't mean you have to do it with everybody, but think of 1 or 2. Create a personal goal of saying, I'd like to do something extraordinary for a donor this month, and I think I want to do it 6 times, 6 different donors, and see if you can't make that happen and see what happens when you do that. Plan these unexpected surprises in your marketing plan. Take a hard look at your work week. Carve out these times. I say 2 to 5 hours. I think start with 2 and build it up as you see people really reacting to what you're doing. You can do it all in one day or you can break it up. But this is now sacred time on your calendar. And make sure that no one and nothing delves into that time or it's not going to work. It's a lot like planned giving, and it can't be a start and a stop. It needs to be consistent. It doesn't have to be done all the time, but consistently, really looking at those donors and cultivating that. Here are some websites that have data on your donors. It's made up of 65 million companies, 85 million people, and 700 industries, providing you detail on all your donors and companies that might support you. Some of them are free and others are fee-based, but I wanted to give them to you so that you know there are places you can go out and look. If you want to know information about their workplace, if you want to know specific prospects, contact information, one is called whitepages.com. You put in their name and the city they live in, and it generally gives you some basic information. If you want to know where they're volunteering, if you want to know some family information, go out to Facebook. Some people use it, some people don't. So again, these are just some resources for you. I'm going to end that to see if anyone has any questions. Let's go out here and see if we have any on the bottom. Again, today, our hope was that each of you would take away a little nugget of something that you could incorporate into your day-to-day fundraising tasks and duties. And for those of you who are really looking at creating a major gifts program, really thinking through, how do I look at the big picture? How do I carve it down into something that's manageable? And hopefully giving you some tools that it gives you a starting point. You don't feel like you're starting with a white paper, that there's a little bit of black on that paper to get you going. We have one question here that says, those that are online, will we get a copy of the PowerPoint? Yes, you will. In fact, those of you who signed online, our marketing person will send that to you directly. If you have others who you want to share that with, you can do it via that email, or you can go out to our website, and we will have the audio and the PowerPoint out there for you to take a look at. Are there any questions here at the office? Well, for those of you who aren't in central Iowa, it has been snowing on and off all day today. Thankfully, nothing that's accumulating. Looks like we're going to have some snow this weekend, but the holidays are definitely upon us. I won't be talking with you again till December, so for those of you I won't get to see, have a great Thanksgiving. Don't forget December 11th when we talk about prospect research, tips and tricks. And if you are in close proximity to our office, we would love to have you come and join us for our holiday open house, which is going to be December 18th. In the past, we've done it at the end of the workday. This year, we're going to try something a little different, and we're doing it over the lunch hour. So we'd love to have you stop by and have something to eat and drink, and just know that we really appreciate all that you do for us as an organization. And if we can do anything for you, we are a resource center, and we'd love to help you out. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll talk to you soon.